And middle. Very good.
All right. Good morning,
Alright.
everyone.
Hey, everyone. Thank you all for joining us for adding value with organic cut flowers. I know Lacey's super excited. I'm super excited. So this is going to be awesome. I'm Teddy Tomeo from NOFA, New York. I'm the Long Island Transitions Educator. We also have Lacey Smith from NOFA Certification for technical support. If you have any specific technical questions, please feel free to message Lacey directly in the chat. Just a reminder, please remain muted throughout the presentation. Corinne asked if you want to keep your videos on, so it's more of a conversation. That would be great and welcome. We also have enabled closed captioning. These captions are auto-generated and not perfect, but if you would like to use the captions, there should be a notification on the top of your screen enabling you to do that. The workshop is being recorded and will be shared on the conference website and mobile app shortly after the end of the presentation. Please feel free to ask questions throughout the presentation. You can use the raise hand option or interrupt when there's a second, or you can also type your questions in the chat and I'll read them out loud for you. NOFA New York's annual winter conference would not be possible without the support of our generous sponsors. NOFA New York would like to specifically thank our app sponsors, Hudson Valley Farm Hub and Honey Dog Farm. To learn more about these organizations and their work, please visit them on the marketplace or online. And now I'd like to pass it off to Corinne Hansch of Lovin' Mama Farm.
Thanks, Teddy. Hi, everyone. Thank you guys for presenting your faces to me. Really honored to be here and speaking with you all. So I've been growing cut flowers since I was a little girl. My mom's maybe one of the original farmer florists. Before that was a term. So I grew up in Northern California and she had a small perennial garden and we grew a lot of annuals and we did the farmer's market in our little tiny town. And we actually saved all the funds from our markets to take a family trip to Europe when I was 17. So it was, I think I caught the farming bug maybe back then. And I've been growing flowers ever since and I'm just super passionate about them. They are my joy. So yeah, my farm, a 2-acre certified organic farm in Amsterdam, New York. We actually started our farm in Northern California. It's a long story, lost our lease, ended up moving all the way across the country to come onto family land. So we're super, super privileged and grateful to have family land to farm on. So we direct market at 5 markets every weekend. So we do 3 markets on Saturdays and 2 markets on Sundays. We do 3 markets year round. We use intensive no-till growing practices. So that's like a deep mulch no-till practice, and flowers actually really love growing in this sort of method. We grow over 250 varieties of veggies and cut flowers. We have a rotationally grazed flock of layer hens, and we're super passionate about regenerative farming, you know, on all the levels, not just the soil and the climate and the environment, but the community level as well. So we're really committed to paying our employees a living wage and giving back to the community as much as we can. And we also are raising 3 kids on the farm, and they're probably my best harvesters because they've literally grown up on my back watching me do it. So they are, and I'm maybe less scared to be strict with them about how to do things perfectly. So they're amazing. So yeah, why cut flowers? So definitely they bring value on so many levels. Added revenue, which can be year round if you do the dried flowers. And I found that if you're a small farm, dried flowers are just a really profitable, we don't have room to do storage crops, but flowers just produce so much, so many stems per square foot. So if you can dry those, it gives you more income in the winter as a small farm. We get, yeah, like I said, we get a high yield per square foot. So it works really well with our intensive no-till system. In this system, you really want to pack the plant, you want to cover the soil as much as possible. And so it's really great to pack the flowers in really tight, and they create such a canopy that they suppress the weeds underneath. We love having flower. We kind of have them scattered here and there. We don't have just like a section of cut flowers. There's kind of rows all over the farm for beneficial insect habitat. and the beneficial insects, they really love the anything in the carrot family or the umbel family. So any of those flat topped flowers, the beneficial insects just adore. And then, yeah, the flowers really attract people to our farm stand at the farmers markets. It's a great way to pull people into your stand. And ultimately, it helps you build connections with your customers when you become, I've done for a few families, I've done flowers for their weddings, for their funerals. And it's just amazing to be kind of like a family florist for my customers. So I really love connecting with my customers, direct marketing. Okay, so I have a lot of information to cover. I just wanted to really quickly go over what we're going to talk about. So I really went all out and gave you guys kind of all my secrets. So I talk about all the varieties that, you know, every year I'm cutting back, because there's endless flowers. Like just with zinnias, there's probably 15, 20 varieties that I grow. So I'm constantly trying to cut back on what I'm growing. So I'm going to go through all my varieties that I grow by season and their spacing. I'm going to talk a little bit about bed prep, planting, weed control, trellising, harvest and post-care, post-harvest care, and then a little bit about prepping for market, design work, drying, and sales. So definitely reach out with questions at any point throughout. All right, so just to real quick show you guys what flowers we grow. And oh, don't feel like you have to write everything down. I'm happy to email this presentation to anybody who wants it, but you know, definitely take notes if you want to. So I just kind of wanted to give you guys a little overview of the 31 types that we grow and the 6 perennials that we grow. So I think that's maybe the hardest part, but also maybe the addictive part of growing flowers is just the endless varieties and possibilities. But it is really fun to just kind of choose what does best for you every season. So spring flowers, this is when customers are just ravenous for flowers and we can sell so many. And in fact, I went to the, for the first time ever, the New England Fruit and Vegetable Growers Conference this past December. And they had a flower session there. And basically almost all the flower farmers were talking about how they were reducing summer. They were almost stopping producing in the summer and just focusing on fall, winter, and spring. And so I think I understand the reason why is because the demand is just so high during those months. There's way less competition. So if you can get your foot in the door in the spring, you're going to do well with flowers. And Mother's Day is a target date I'm still figuring out. I started a lot of things really early this year. I'm really hoping to hit that Mother's Day target. So here we go. Tulips, anemones, iris, narcissus, and ranunculus. So these are kind of the winter flowers that we grow in the fall or winter. This is a lot of information, so you know we'll just kind of go through it. So for the spring bulbs and corms, anemones and ranunculus are just so beautiful and such a joy to grow. They're a little intimidating at first, but and especially in the Northeast where it's really cold, you do have to have a high tunnel to grow these guys in. You can maybe get away with one early spring planting in the field, which I'm going to try this year. They do tend to just you get a shorter flowering window because it gets warm so quickly in the spring. So they really like to flower in the cool months. So you get the dried corms shipped to you, and they do need to be soaked. So I soak my ranunculus just for an hour, and then we pot them right up into 50 cell trays. The anemones are a little denser. I soak them like 3 to 4 hours. Also pot them up into 50 cell trays. And then I actually grow them under cages in my greenhouse because I've had squirrels try to dig them out before. So we let them germinate kind of under cages in our minimally heated greenhouse. We heat our propagation house to like 45 degrees in the winter. So they really like a cool growing environment. And about 6 weeks later, they're ready to plant. So I do my first planting. All right, so we do 6 sessions. The first, we do once a month, we start. So December, January, and February, we're starting them. And then we're planting them out March, February, March. Yeah, we're gonna do our first planting in the greenhouse next week. Then we're gonna do a March planting, and then we'll try to get that early April planting in the field. And we do a 6-inch spacing on those. And then iris and tulips, we plant in this egg crate method. So we'll dig a trench and just pack them in like sardines in there. We go about 4 inches deep, and we use a weed cloth tarp on the side to dig all the soil onto. place all the tulips in and then recover with that soil. And then we top dress with another few inches of compost. So actually after we pull the tulips, once they're done, it's like this perfect bed ready to go that's been like deeply mulched. So it's really nice method. And this year, so with the tulips this year we did about 3/4 of them in the tunnels, because again, that spring rush, people are just ravenous. So the earlier, the better. And then we're doing 1/4 of them out in the fields. That gives us a long harvest window off of the tulips. And actually professional growers treat tulips like annuals. So when we harvest, we pull the entire bulb with the stem attached. And the reason for that is because they need, you would have to leave several sets of leaves on the tulip for it to regenerate energy back into the bulb to be able to rebloom the following year. So it's a pretty labor intensive process, but the tulips are just a great income producer in the early spring months. So it can be a big investment up front, but then it's kind of like your spring cash flow. And we don't really have any competition. I think there's one other grower at our markets doing them, but people are I highly recommend tulips as a great profit producer on your farm. And then I'm slowly adding my narcissus collection. So I grow a lot of the heirloom narcissus, and these are the only ones we do let perennialize in the ground. So we're experimenting with different spacing with those guys, but they really tend to come in they come in pretty late. I found the heirloom narcissus. So they come in around Mother's Day, which is really great.
Before you switch slides, there's two
Yeah.
questions about this.
Okay.
Renee asked, what bulbs or corms are you planting in this picture?
Those are tulips.
And then Jenny asks, are irises perennials? Or are there different types of irises for cut flowers?
I use the Dutch iris, and they can, like tulips, they can perennialize, but I tend to treat them as annuals. But always experiment. Yeah, I don't know the specifics of the iris. They, like any of these bulbs, I don't know if I talk about harvest in these, but you do have to go out and harvest every day, especially with the iris. You got to catch them when they're really tightly closed. And it can be literally overnight. You can come out and they're all blown open. So you really have to watch closely with those guys. Okay. So spring annuals. So, okay, so these guys we do several successions of as well. We do one early succession. I just planted all of these guys and they just germinated. Yay! So they're growing on in the greenhouse. We'll plant them in March into our unheated tunnels. So calendula, poppies, snapdragon, stocks, sweet Williams, and I have all my spacings there with them. They are really cold tolerant, and I know Johnny's seed has done some really awesome research on overwintering. I want to experiment next year with kind of overwintering some of these guys so that they can work on developing their roots, so that as soon as the sun comes back in February, they're just taking off growing. In general, growing flowers under tunnels, you get superior stems, super long stems. But again, you need to prioritize space for your flowers, which is hard when you're running veggies too. But we always find a little bit of room here or there for some of those early flowers. So calendula is super easy to grow. My favorite varieties are Ivory Princess, Crown Orange, Neon, and Pink Surprise. And yeah, they're just super easy. They give so many stems. They're just such a yummy, beautiful color in the spring. The poppies, so that seed is really tricky. They need light to germinate, so you want to make sure not to cover them with soil. And I love the Icelandic and the Colibri seeds. Yeah, I said consider buying plugs. If you're certified organic, you have to make sure that they're untreated. But they are a little tricky to start, but don't give up, keep trying. Same with the Snapdragon, tiny seed, but they do germinate pretty easily. I love the Potomac and the Opus series. So the lavender is just so pretty. The bronze is kind of that orange salmon color, one of my favorite colors. The apple blossom's really cute. And then I'm also obsessed with the Madame Butterfly series. So yeah, we do 2 successions of Snapdragons, one in the tunnel and then one out in the field. Stalks, I want every single color. They're so fragrant and so yummy. I do those in the paper pot transplanter. So we do a 2-inch spacing on those. I've experimented a bit with paper pot with the flowers, and they take so long to grow that I don't know. I'm basically only doing stalks in the paper pot for now, but I love the Cats variety, the Cats series, so the apricot and the cherry blossom. The The Cheerful series is really great. It's kind of like a white and cream color. And then the Iron series is really strong. And the first year I grew them, I was like, what do I do? It was in Northern California. It was really tricky because the spring comes and it gets so hot. They flowered at like about this tall. And I thought I had to pinch them. I didn't realize what was going on, but they are a one cut wonder. So you just get one stem off of them, which is why it's really important to pack them in super tight, like a 2-inch spacing. So you get more production out of them. And then Sweet Williams, I adore as well. They're super vigorous, easy to grow, throw up a bunch of stems, and those bright colors. At farmers markets, I found that customers are really drawn to the bright, hot colors. So I love that bright, hot purple, neon cherry. I also grow Electron, which is like a bicolor purple and white, which is just really cute because they kind of have an old-fashioned look and really fragrant. Okay.
Renee asks, did you find that squirrels and deer dig up your tulip bulbs when planted in the field instead of the tunnel?
One year we had a woodchuck eat like half our tulips, or I don't know if it was a woodchuck, but something, and it was really, really sad. So we kind of like always move where they are, and we do have a deer fence. The year we didn't have a deer fence, they came in and chowed the whole time. The deer love tulips. So yeah, you definitely want to protect from the critters. Trapping, I like to just move around where I plant them every year to kind of confuse them.
And then Jenny asked, what zone are you in and how many weeks between your 2 Snapdragons sessions?
I am in zone 5. And let's see, I just started one round. This year's a little weird because I'm going to be gone. We're leaving tomorrow on a 3-week trip. So I'm waiting until I get back. So about 4 to 5 weeks probably between plantings. So like late January and then early March. Yeah.
And then are your Sweet William biennials or FYF?
FYF, yeah, first year flower. I think that's why I'm really curious to do the overwintered varieties, because then you can get more selection. So if you plant them in the fall, if it's a biennial, you'll get a spring bloom. But if it is a biennial and you plant in the spring, you're not going to get any blooms off of it. So you want to make sure to find the first year flower varieties. Great question. Okay, so spring perennials are really great because they come in kind of that in-between time between the tulips and the ranunculus and the annual flowers. So peonies, I just keep investing every year more and more money into peonies. They thrive in this climate. When I knew I was going to be leaving Northern California, I was like, at least I'm going to be able to grow tons of peonies in upstate New York. So peonies thrive in our climate. Lilacs thrive in our climate. And then perennials are such an important tool on the small farm, but it is really hard when you're running annuals to find the time to prioritize for perennials and to remember to keep them weeded and everything. So it's hard. We're slowly adding perennials every year. I recommend Veronica. It's really easy to start from seed. It's this beautiful pale blue flower that, again, the blue is another color. If you can stick a blue in an arrangement, people are going to buy it. Because it's kind of a rare flower color. And then yarrow has got just so many great beneficial insect habitat abilities and so pretty and so versatile. So big plug for yarrow. Okay, so late spring. So these are still officially all flowers that can take a light frost, but I consider them late spring, maybe because they take a little longer to grow, or maybe it's just my planting schedule timing. They don't actually come in until early summer, but I considered them late spring because you can plant them really early out in the field and they can take a light frost. I think Godetia, I'm not totally sure if Godetia can take a frost now. I can't remember on that one, but I know the rest of these guys can take a light frost. So Amy, I totally adore. It gets huge, so I give it 12-inch spacing. I love the green mist variety. It just smells so good, and it's just that beautiful white lacy color. Bells of Ireland, again, people just love those, and they smell like soap, so yummy. The Daucus dara, that's another in the carrot family. It's that purple lace flower. That one's another real beauty. Delphinium, totally obsessed with Delphinium. I think I ordered every single different Magic Fountains variety this year. I have trouble getting them to germinate. The Guardian series is pretty solid. Gives great first year flower stems. Belladonna, Cliveden Beauty is that pale blue Belladonna type. That's so lovely. So yeah, delphiniums give you that blue pop. So again, the blue color is really something that's going to draw your customers in. Feverfew, we just do one big planting of feverfew and we dry a lot of that. So you can see I just have abundant buckets full of feverfew, and it's such a cute filler. It's that really old-fashioned kind of look. And I love the balls ultra double, the Vegmo single and the Vegmo sunny ball. Godetia, Clarkia, people just ask me all the time, what's that flower? What's that flower? What's that flower when I grow it? So it definitely requires staking. It gets pretty top heavy. I mean, there's pretty much all the flowers do. We're going to talk about staking eventually, but yeah, Godetia is just a really fun old-fashioned flower. And I love the gray series, the salmon, the white, or the rose pink. Larkspur, another essential for drying. So I used to do those in the paper pot, but I've just found really spotty germination, leaves a lot of holes when I'm transplanting. So I'm switching back to plugs with those. But again, larkspur doesn't really like to be transplanted. So you really have to, living in zone 5, you really have to kind of cheat a little bit because of our cold springs. So I do germinate larkspur. I incubate it in the cold for a week or so before I bring it. So I plant it, I put it out in the cold, and then I bring it back in. So I think it does need cold to germinate. The fancy series has those lovely, the smoky eyes. I love the blue purple color. Again, blue, as much blue as you can get. Nagelia, we grew strictly for drying, for the seed pods, and then same with poppies. And oh yeah, I have a picture of my dry room in here. So we built these shelves on the left down here. You can see our dry room. We kind of built shelves of wires so we can just fit a ton of dried flowers when they come in. And once they're dry, you can pull them off the line. If you don't have this much space, you can just kind of hang them, let them dry, and then box them up. Really, any box will do. Just throw them into a box, and then you can rehang things. But I'm going to talk about more dried flowers in a bit too. Any questions on this one?
Evan asked, how do you start your delphinium, and do you grow them as perennials?
I don't. I have, but our farm is just so small that basically as soon as one crop is done, we're just ripping it out and replanting. So you definitely can try to perennialize them if you have space. And I start them in mother trays. So I just have a little thin tray with soil. I just scatter the seed on top. They also like a little bit of cold. So they're delphinium and larkspur are basically the same. I think they're very closely related, and they like a little cold to germinate as well. And then once they pop, I pot them up into 50 cell trays.
And then do you plant feverfew in fall and over winter?
That you can do as well. Yeah, I've had some accidentally that I didn't dig out come back, but we don't really, I just plant them in the spring. So I plant them in like March.
And then Jenny also asked, do you direct sow any of your crops?
No. None of our flowers, even sunflowers, we transplant everything. And it just gives us, I think because we're so small, we need every little square inch to produce for us. So the transplanting really allows for higher success rates. Yeah. Okay, summer flowers, we made it to summer. So sunflowers, obviously huge profit margin with sunflowers. I basically only grow the branching types now just because we have so many other crops that we're juggling. So I just grow the Starburst Panache, I think that's how you say it, and the Soraya. And these guys, especially the Panache, it will throw up a really big fat first flower head that's huge. And so they're a little short, but I usually sacrifice one of the side shoots to get it to be at least 12 inches long. And I can get $5 a stem for those early in the season, or $3 a stem later on. And then the side shoots we cut for either for bouquets or for straight bunches. I have definitely experimented with the non-branching. I love the Pro Cut. They have so many gorgeous varieties. And I used to make a lot of rainbow bunches of sunflowers. So I had the white, the red, the orange, the yellow, and people went crazy for those as well. You definitely have to be on it with your succession planting. If you want to have sunflowers every week, you will sell sunflowers every week. And as far as like the right stage to pick them, you really have to be there. Another super labor intensive where you really have to pick every day. And you really want to catch them at the right time. So I found with these ruffly ones, I do look for all the ruffles to be just barely popped. That's for me the perfect stage. And then with the Pro Cut or single layer of petals, this is ideal, like really tightly closed. They continue opening once you've cut them. So let's see. Yeah, I guess I sow every 3 weeks, the branching types. So I get about a 3-week pick off of each planting. And yeah, picking every day. It's kind of that's why we tend to kind of get really burnt out on them by the end of the season. Any questions on this slide?
There's just one follow-up question from the last slide when Renee asked if you plant feverfew in March in the tunnel or in the fields.
In the field. Oh, I start it in the propagation house in March. So I crack the seed then and then transplant. It can take a freeze, obviously. So yeah, as soon as I can get it into the ground, it's going in. All right, the summer workhorse flowers. So every year I keep cutting my list of what I grow in the summer and just really zeroing in on the heavy producers that make big, huge flowers so that bouquets come together quickly. I'm actually cutting Cosmos off my list this year. They're so productive, but they just take, again, it's another crop you have to pick like every 2 days. And I just have too many of those on my farm. So I'm cutting Cosmos. So Ageratum is maybe not a big flower, but it's that beautiful purple color that and they're kind of fuzzy and they just give that texture. So I really like, they love the humidity of upstate New York. And I found that they just keep popping out blooms all summer long. So I don't even have to do a succession planting. I just do one planting of Ageratum. And I love the Blue Horizon or the Blue Planet. I don't need, there's so many varieties, but I just stick with the blue ones. Again, blue, blue's the color. Amaranth, totally obsessed. They're amazing plants. They get huge, like so much carbon sequestration going on with these plants, and big, huge flowers that you can dry or you fresh. So they're kind of like a filler flower, but they're also this velvety, crinkly, just people are so fascinated by them. So I love the Hot Biscuits. It's kind of a brown color. The Tower series is green. There's a green and a red one, and they look kind of like Dr. Seuss plants. And then Opopio is just the most amazing variety that just ends up, you do one cut on it and you're going to get a lot of side shoots. But we do several plantings of Amaranth. Again, you get about a 3-week harvest window off of them, but they do hold really well in the field. It's not like you have to be out there picking them every day. If you do grow Cosmos, I recommend the Double Click series. They're like a big, fat, fluffy one that's super pretty. Gomphrena, not a big flower, really kind of a pain to harvest, but they're that little gumdrop shape that's just so cute. And you can dry them. They're a real conversation starter. So they're kind of more of an accent flower, but they're also they love the heat. They thrive in the heat. You can kind of beat them up and they're super easy to grow. Marigolds, obsessed. I love them. We grew the Garuda series this year, and we just did one planting in a high tunnel. And my God, we picked off of them all summer long. I cannot believe that. So when we lived in California, like I would never imagine that I would grow marigolds in a high tunnel, but in New York, it's with all the rain we get, they really do thrive under cover. You get really tall stems off of them, and I dry a ton of them. They're beautiful dried flower, super vivid orange and yellow. So again, it's those hot colors of summer that just people are really attracted to. Status, wonderful filler. Mostly I try to save it for drying. I haven't had the best luck growing it in upstate New York. I don't know if it's all the moisture is challenging for it, but I will never give up on Status. I'm going to keep growing Status. Again, you can get a blue. I recommend the pale blue. It's just a beautiful, dreamy blue, light blue color. Straw flower, super popular. The king size series, I grow like every color. I can never grow enough straw flower. So I use it in bouquets, but also mainly dry it. And then zinnias, that's like, if I ever get a flower tattoo, it's going to be of a zinnia. They are just the bread and butter of summer production. And so the Beanary series pops out these huge dahlia-sized blooms in every single color. The Oklahoma series is a little more of a cute button type. The white one is amazing if you're doing floral design work for weddings. The salmon is super pretty. I love the giant cactus varieties. The Queen series, of course, you have to grow the Queen series. The Queen Red Lime. I think there's a new one this year, the Queen Peach. I'm really excited to grow that one. And then the Persian Carpet is just a little teeny tiny one. I kind of grow that one as I do several successions of that one as kind of a one cut wonder, but it just adds this little sparkle to the bouquets that I really love. All right, any questions on this slide?
Justin asked what the ideal picking stage for sunnies is.
For sunnies?
Yep.
Oops. So down here, I don't know if you can see my mouse clicker, but
We can.
okay, yeah. So you see how these inner this is actually the flower in here, and see how these are all really tightly closed. You really want to find these closed and that they haven't really been, they're just starting to open on the outer edge right here, and that's where the bees start pollinating. So that if you can get them at this stage where the petals are just lifting off, that's what I recommend. And yeah, it's hard. It's been really hard, honestly, to train employees on this, because I one time I had an employee go through and deadhead all of these perfect ones and pick all the blown open ones, and it was just so heartbreaking. So it's confusing, but you know, experiment on your own table at home and just get them as young as you can. And so I hopefully that answers it. Yeah.
And then Jenny asked, do you plant in landscape fabric?
No, we don't. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute.
Okay.
Yeah, we plant into straw.
Do you succession your plant straw flowers?
No, actually, I just do one planting, and they are I almost put them in the spring flowers because I do plant them out ASAP in the spring. They can actually take a light frost, and they just go and go and go all summer long. I just do one planting of those.
Okay. And then Renee just had a comment saying, my status did so well in the drought this last summer. I
Yes.
learned it doesn't want water.
Yeah.
And then asked about your general irrigation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we use basically drip for everything. We have a pond that we use water for. Yeah, great tip. Thank you. Okay, summer perennials. So hydrangea is just, yeah, kind of a no-brainer around here. It thrives in this climate, and we dry a ton of hydrangea as well. It's kind of like the centerpiece of all my dried bouquets because it's just so fat, takes up so much space. And then goldenrod, you probably have fields full of goldenrod on your farm or somewhere nearby. And I don't actually really pick it too much anymore because I have so many other flowers. But in the early years, we just goldenrod all, you know, basically maybe late June, early July, right through until it's yellow. So you can pick it. It's really nice when it's still green and hasn't actually colored up yet. It's a great greenery filler, and we just have acres of it on our farm. Okay, late summer, fall flowers. I can't believe how red this slide is.
Just before that,
Oh, yeah.
Jenny asked which hydrangea varieties you use.
I don't really, this is just like one that I got from the soil and water plant sale, like my first year that I moved here. I really want to expand. There's so many amazing varieties. I'm not an expert on that, but I would just say get some hydrangeas and plant them, but definitely do some, these are really floppy stems. They're actually kind of terrible for working with for cut flowers, but that's why we mostly dry them. So definitely look for a variety that has the strong stems. And I know a lot of growers make a lot of money on hydrangeas. So they do really thrive in our climate.
Okay. And then there are a couple questions about fertilizer and if you're gonna cover your fertilizer.
Yeah, I will cover that. Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay. So late summer, fall flowers. So amaranth really shines. The broomcorn is really fun. So you can see it down here. We dry the broomcorn as well, and it just gives that kind of festive fall flair. Celosia, obsessed with celosia. There's so many varieties of celosia. I really love the Selway series, the Texas Plume, which I get from Floret, Ruby Parfait, the Kramer series, and the Pampas Plume. Oh, I forgot to say with the amaranth, there's so many varieties of amaranth. I grow the Coral Fountain and the Green Cascade only in the fall because I find that they don't quite, they're the dangling types and or the cascading varieties. And I find that I can keep up with them better in the fall. So I just kind of put off until my last planting to grow those cascading. And it's nice to have a little more fuzzy elementals that time of year when there's less options from the flowers. So yeah, dahlias, I'm still trying to figure out, but I do like the Karma series, the Cornell series. Neon is this big fat orange one that I found does pretty well in our cooler climates of summer. And I basically only grow dahlias in high tunnels now, but every year I'm kind of like, I'm never growing them again, but I still keep growing them every year. Lisianthus are super amazing. They're pretty hard to start from seed. So you might want to consider plugs, but that can be tricky again if you're certified organic. There's so many different series out there. I like the Arena series, but once you get them started and planted, they thrive in the summer heat. And I pack them in really tight, like 3 inches apart. And they grow super slow in the beginning, but eventually by August, September, you're going to have just armfuls of Lizzie's. Mahogany Splendor is in the hibiscus family. I've got it up here in these bouquets. It's a great foliage for fall. straw flower just keeps on pumping out in the fall. And then zinnias, so I do 2 successions of zinnias, one around, I plant in the ground around late May, and then another one probably sometime in early July. So it's really nice to have that new flush of zinnias for the fall. Okay, any questions on this one?
Is the broomcorn a filler, and is it in any of these pictures?
Yeah, it's down here on the left, the bottom left. It's sorghum. It's the same thing as sorghum, and it actually comes in lots of different colors. You can get like a black one, I think. A filler, yeah, I guess it's a filler, or just like that airy accent. Yeah.
And then do you stagger any of your Lizzies or plant different groups at the same time?
Lizzies?
Yeah.
I just do one planting. That's probably a really good, if you can manage to succession, that'd be great. And I think they can take a light freeze as well, so you can put them in pretty early in the spring. Yeah, go for it. Okay, so this is a picture of my dry room again, and I just wrote an article for Growing for Market that talks a lot of detail about my dried flower operation, but this is kind of a list of all the flowers that we dry. You can also see we dry thyme and sage. I use a lot of sage actually in my dried flower wreaths, just a nice silvery color. And then, yeah, just experiment with drying as many flowers as you can. I mean, my article in Growing for Market was kind of like as a way to, it's how I deal with like any broken stems. As I'm making bouquets, I collect broken stems, I hang those. Things that come home from market, we can hang. It's just really nice to not have to throw flowers away. Like at least with microgreens or lettuce, you can feed to the chickens, but flowers, it's really sad to do all that work and have to toss them at the end of market. So definitely experiment with drying. And every year I'm experimenting and trying something new. Like I even tried drying tulips, which unfortunately didn't work, but I do have a friend who makes, who dyes thread with purple tulip petals. So I saved a bunch of purple tulip petals for her. So you can get so creative, and I just highly recommend research drying flowers. Any questions about this one?
Jenny just said she never tried drying narcissus.
Yeah,
We'll
daffodils.
definitely
Yeah,
try it this year.
it's crazy. I know, I never would have expected that they would dry, but it's just such a cute little pop of color. It's the trick I found with the narcissus is that you dry them, in May, and then when you go in the fall to make your bouquets, they've already been sitting for 6 months, so they do kind of lose a little bit of their color. But I literally can dry just about anything.
And then does the ideal cutting stage change for fresh versus dry cut flowers?
Oh, that's a great question. Not really. I mean, trying to think. Obviously, like sunflowers, you wouldn't want to dry them when they're just tightly closed. I kind of wait for them to open, but which they pretty much do just the 2 days during market. So by the end of market, if they haven't sold, they're pretty much opened up enough to dry.
And then are there any specific temperature or conditions best for drying?
Yes. So we have this room that all the windows are blacked out. We have a dehumidifier and a fan going. So you definitely in this climate need a dehumidifier. Out west, we could just literally hang them in a shed and they'd be dry in a week. But out here with the humidity, you really need a dehumidifier.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then sorry, continue.
Oh, no.
I was just gonna ask about the dahlias, how you go about drying them. Do you hang them upside down? Do they lose petals?
Amazingly, no, they don't lose petals. I've even dried the cafe au laits, and they dry up beautifully. Yeah,
Oh.
hang them all upside down.
Awesome.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and here's just some pictures of so I got a clamp machine this year. It's really revolutionized wreath making for me. Yeah. Okay, so we did it. We got through all my varieties, and I just wanted to kind of focus in on the top. If I had to pick 10, these would be my top 10 pick. So tulips, number 1, sunflowers, zinnias, marigolds, snapdragons, celosia, ranunculus, calendula, amaranth, and peonies.
And Renee asked if you could just go back one slide to see those
Yeah.
pictures.
Yeah.
How does the clamper work?
It has a foot pedal underneath that, so you get a special base that has kind of a clamp that you set in between the press that then closes it. So it closes right around the bundle of flowers that you make. I think they're usually used for like evergreen wreaths, which is, I didn't know if it would work for dried flowers, it would crunch them, but you can see I use a lot of the Sweet Annie. That's this little tiny kind of, that looks like a bunch of bells on a string. And that is like a kind of my filler. So I do put a lot of the Sweet Annie underneath, but then also on top so that as the clamp goes, it doesn't break the fragile stems. It kind of has a cushion of Sweet Annie. But yeah, so many hours saved with this machine. And I splurged for the tabletop, but you can just get the clamp machine. That's like under $200 for the machine, for just the clamp machine, if you can figure out how to install it into your own table. I think it's worth every penny. Yeah. But
And then Jenny asked about your price for dried versus fresh flowers.
It's so hard. I mean, pricing, we're going to talk about that. It's so hard
Okay.
at the farmer's market. It's so hard to get the true value of your price because the average customer doesn't really know the true value of flowers. I found that $15 for dried flowers is the magic number. Unfortunately, it's less than what I sell my fresh bouquets for. My fresh bouquets I sell for 20. But I don't know if it's just winter market sales. People have less extra money to spend. I don't know what it is, but that's my magic number. And then the wreaths, this is a large wreath I sell for 100. And then I also have this is a 12-inch base, but I also have a 6-inch base, which is really small. It only takes six bunches. And those I do for 50.
And then Paulina also asked, do you ever do workshops? She's thinking about doing dried flowers and thinking that dried flowers would be a great fall workshop.
I think people would love that. I've never been able to pull that together, but I've dreamed of it. Yeah. Great question. Go for it. Okay, so growing techniques. A lot of it has to do, it's really tricky because each flower is so unique and you get to learn each flower and what their specificities are. So a lot of flower seed are really tiny and some need light to germinate, like I was talking about with the poppies. So definitely do your research. I generally start the smaller seeds and smaller plugs or in like mother trays and then bump them up into bigger style trays. Always experimenting with paper pot, saves so much labor when you're transplanting. So stocks, definitely 100% use the 2-inch spacing. I've tried with celosia, poppies, and straw flowers because I plant them at a 6-inch spacing, but I am going back to just using plugs, mainly because sometimes germination can be spotty, especially with the poppies. I don't like to do a paper chain planting if it's, really a spotty tray. So more and more I'm just doing plugs, but I am experimenting with a 4-inch spacing on snapdragons for this spring, which I saw a grower in Florida doing. So I don't know how that's going to work, but always experimenting with the paper pot transplanter. Watering, yeah, irrigation, drip is essential. Flowers really don't want overhead and it can break their branches. So you definitely want to get drip down on your flowers. But like we were saying earlier, like Statice doesn't really like too much water. A lot of them, especially if you have a no-till system, once they're established, we really don't have to water them too much at all. It depends on the season, of course, but yeah, a lot of the flowers that I grow are definitely from my West Coast experience, and they're super tough and hardy, and they almost thrive with less water. So the deep mulch no-till, I've done presentations on our growing methods before, but we basically just lay about 2 inches of compost down on beds before planting. We do use the Crayers fertilizer, the 543, I believe it is. It's from Layer Hen, so it's a little higher in calcium. And we just use that on all our beds. We just sprinkle that on top, add compost. We've been experimenting. Last year it worked really well with, we do all the bed prep, we lay all the irrigation down, and then we deep mulch with straw, especially deep in the pathways, a little lighter on the beds. And then we'll go through and transplant, just kind of open up a little hole in the straw and put the plug right into that. So we've tried with weed cloth before. It just is not, we just don't like using it. It hurts my hands when I'm working with it. And I found it dries things out, and there could be a really rough period right after you transplant. And so we like feeding our microbes with straw instead. And it's amazing how, you might still have to go through and do 1 or 2 rounds of hand weeding, but for our regenerative growing styles, that the straw really works a lot better for us. And we always try to get May cut rye straw. It's like has the least weed seed in it. Yeah, and flowers like a really intensive spacing. Like you could see in the last slides where I showed you, like nothing, I think 12 inches is the biggest spacing I do, but most of them are like 6 inches to 9 inches apart. So no-till or deep mulch no-till system really works well with intensive planting because that does weed suppression and you just get so many more blooms per square foot. Pretty much every single flower we grow requires trellising, especially in this rainy climate that we live in. So like a heavy rain can really knock flowers down, or wind. So we have invested in so many T-posts. We use I think those are 4 foot, I believe. And then we use the Horta trellis. This year, we just bought a lot of concrete mesh, and our crew is all winter long. They're building cages out of the concrete mesh. So we're building these 6 foot long cages. You kind of cut the corner out and fold the edges down. We're hoping that's going to save a lot of time because pounding T-posts for all those flowers is super exhausting. Sometimes like the amaranth, it gets so tall that we do just string a corral along the edge. Some flowers you can get away with just the corral. So you put the T-post in and then you just run baling twine along the edges to kind of hold them all in. You have to do a few layers of that and it kind of keeps them from leaning over. So I do that with the taller ones like amaranth. Succession planting. So yeah, if you want to have continual flowers through the season, you're going to have to succession plant. So I kind of listed the ones that are really essential to succession plant down below: radunculus, calendula, snapdragon, sunflowers, zinnias, cosmos, or not cosmos, marigold, amaranth, and gomphrena. Yeah. All right.
Jenny asked how you flip your beds during the season.
So we generally, like, this is kind of a cool picture because you can see we just went through and harrowed. We do use a rotary harrow that basically kind of does the raking for us. So we set it really shallow, about like 1 inch deep. And when one crop is done, we rip it out. We usually pull the root balls, which I know is like debatable. Like a lot of no-till growers really like to leave the root balls, but we usually are. It depends on if we're hand transplanting plugs or if we're using the paper pot. So the paper pot really doesn't like to hit root balls, but if we had a crop with big root balls and then we're going in with hand transplanting, we might leave the root balls, but basically remove the last crop, like everything, weeds, everything is gone, and then sprinkle the Crayer's fertilizer on top, add a new layer of compost, and then plant right, and maybe do the straw and then plant right into that. And it depends so much on your soil and like how old the beds are. Like very first time we do no-till, we're adding like 6 inches of compost. Now that it's our 6th year on the farm, we're adding less and less every year. So we don't necessarily always add compost between flips. It just kind of depends on the bed and what it needs. But the compost does a great job of, as long as it's weed seed free, of also suppressing weeds. And so when you till, you're stirring up the weed seed. So adding that layer of compost on top helps suppress the weeds even more.
And then Renee asked if the Horta Nova on the zinnias in this picture helps with production or makes a big difference.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, zinnias are actually, they're really strong, but we just go ahead and net them anyways. And we do as little, we only do what's required. So yeah, I would say yes. It really does help because you really want those. It's so sad to do all that work and then have all these bent stems that are not marketable. So it is totally worth it to do the trellising.
And do you keep a garden journal?
No, it's all up here.
And then Jenny asked, do you do any cover cropping?
No, because we're so small. So we just use compost instead of cover crops. But we are trying to expand into a bigger field. So I definitely am curious to do more of the no-till with cover crops. I don't think flowers will probably be in that system. It'd be more for field crops. But yeah, there's some interesting cover cropping going on with no-till in small scale systems. So what is his name? The guy from Maine. I'll try to remember his name, but he wrote a book recently about their very small farm, maybe 2 to 3 acres, that they integrate cover crops in with their no-till system. So yeah, there's definitely resources out there.
And then there's a couple questions about your compost type. Jenny said, this is my third year growing cut flowers, and after adding Vermont compost 2 seasons in a row, my soil test says I'm at optimal phosphorus level. Is your compost manure based?
It is food scraps and yard waste mostly. We're honestly not the best at soil testing. We're a lot more like intuitive with that, where we look for physical signs from the plants. But yeah, in general, flowers do like a lot of phosphorus, but you never want to get too much of that in there.
And do you use any other mulches besides straw?
Well, yes, in our perennials, we've done sheet mulching before. So we have done the cardboard with wood chips on top. That can be a little tricky in no-till. I'm kind of moving away from that because a lot of the perennial weeds that have a lot of the runner grasses tend to really thrive in that situation. So I don't know if I would recommend that. Just be warned of those grasses. Yeah. Okay, harvest methods. So it is pretty complicated and really important. So you really do want to get your flowers at the right stage. What's complicated is that every flower kind of has its own requirements for that. So I just tried to cover a few of them. So for the zinnias and the gomphrenias, you kind of do the wiggle test where you shake them and you make sure that their neck is strong and not flopping when you shake it. So you want that strong neck. Mostly you want them pretty tightly closed, just starting to show color, like tulips or sunflowers. A lot of those you want to pick them really tight and they keep opening. Dahlias, you do want them about 3/4 open. For amaranth and marigolds, I like them mostly open. So it's really just trial and error, doing research, learning from other growers, but definitely figuring out if you pick them at the proper stage, your customer is going to get a longer vase life. So it's just about creating a quality product for your customers. A lot of flowers, like I've been talking about, need daily harvest, which is really annoying, but I think it's worth it for tulips. Peonies, you have to pick at least once a day, sometimes twice a day. Sunflowers, once a day, you could probably get away with every other day if you need a Saturday off or something. Poppies need every day. Then some other flowers do need every other day. Cosmos, Godetia, dahlias. That's why I'm cutting Cosmos off my growing list this year. Clean buckets, so important. They always say your vessel should be clean enough to drink out of, because bacteria is one of the main things that can shorten the vase life of your flowers. So we scrub our buckets out weekly. Definitely paying attention to the time of day when you're harvesting. You really want to harvest those delicate flowers early in the morning if you can get to it. It's really hard when you're also a veg farm and trying to pick all that veg early in the morning, but you just have to kind of juggle it around and make it work. The flowers, actually, if you pick them at the right stage and rush them right into the walk-in, you can get a pretty long life out of them. So it's more important to pick them at the right stage than pick them like the day before market. Walk-in cooler, definitely you need for storing your flowers. I should mention, you definitely don't want your flowers and like tomatoes in the same room, because the tomatoes release the ethylene gas that can cause the flowers to brown. So just be aware of fruits and flowers. They don't really want to mix too much. Oh yeah, I never drag buckets through the field. So I fill the ATV up with, we have an electric ATV, and we fill the back up with about 6 buckets. I only fill them about 1/3 full, and I never drag buckets around in the field with me. I always pick a huge armful, and then either my daughter's out there and she can run them in, or I have another employee who basically, whoever's walking back will grab everyone's armfuls and stick them all in the bucket. So that will save your backs a lot. 18-inch stem length minimum. That's also a really hard one to pass off to employees, but it's about from elbow to the tip of your fingers is about 18 inches. So, using your body parts to measure is always helpful. Definitely strip the leaves as you're cutting. So you have to strip the leaves off of the flowers so that it doesn't create more rot possibility when they're sitting in the water. Also, it's harder for the flower. Once you cut it, you're sticking it in water and trying to rehydrate that flower. So if it has to rehydrate the leaves, it's just going to be harder on the flower. but mainly it's for the bacteria possibilities of it rotting down in the water. So you just get in a habit of snipping and stripping. Sometimes if you've been cutting flowers all day, the stripping will actually cut right into your fingers. So you might want to put a little like Band-Aid or like protect your fingers somehow. And then it's really important to condition your flowers by taking them straight from the field into the cooler. So we generally have all our flowers have been conditioned in the cooler for at least a few hours before we arrange with them, except for zinnias. We always pick those like on Friday afternoon so that they're really fresh right for market.
Do you use any preservatives or flower food in the water?
No, it's really tricky when you're certified organic. You can't, I've tried with like hydrogen peroxide. It's kind of a alternative to bleach. But I just use really clean buckets and clean water.
And do you have any or a favorite harvesting tool?
Yes, I like the snips from Johnny's. I can't remember what they're called, but they're like $35 or $40, but so worth it. So worth it. I buy like 4 or 5 a year because we always lose them. But yeah.
And then do you have a system for mass cleaning buckets? At our farm, we like always have so many buckets.
I know somebody did a presentation and I saw they had a bucket cleaner. I was like, what is that? So they, I guess, exist, but she said they got it luckily, like randomly from some other farmer. She didn't really have a source for me. So we just use a scrub brush and OxiClean. And we just kind of have one bucket that's the soapy bucket. And then we just keep transferring the soap to another bucket and keep scrubbing. And
gotcha.
I don't know. We have a lot of just badass mamas who work on our farm who've cleaned so many dishes in their life. They just crush through it. But yeah, it's a slow slog to clean the buckets. Okay, so arranging. So straight bunches and bouquets. So straight bunches just means all one variety. Traditionally at the florist, they come in 10 stems per bunch. But for me, for marketing purposes, getting customers at market to understand the true value of flowers is really tricky. So you really have to find that sweet spot with the pricing. And I just do straight bunches for $10. Just so easy for somebody. It's really, really easy to spend $10 on flowers. So the way I do that is instead of putting 10 stems in my straight bunches, I put a $10 value of stems. So that way I can still be getting $2 or $3 a stem for some of my specialty flowers, but I'm only putting like 3 or 4 in the bunch. So like a straight bunch of sunflowers usually has 5 or 6 stems. Dahlias will have 3 to 5 stems. Zinnias, sometimes if I have tons of them, I can put up to 10 stems, but I might do less if they're like the huge fat binary ones. So it gives you a lot of versatility. Bouquets, this could be a whole presentation, but you know, I'm blessed that I've been doing this since I was a little girl, so it really comes naturally to me. But I found that with market bouquets, you're not designing a wedding bouquet. It's almost like making a bunch of beets or a bunch of carrots. You make up a recipe, you figure out how many stems of each that you're putting in, and that's it. You're not trying to arrange it. You're just basically, I can do it with my eyes closed. It takes me about 30 seconds to put a bouquet together. So once your flowers are hydrated, you really want to have everything prepped. You want to have your favorite music blasting, and you fill all your buckets. I fill them about just under halfway. Again, these are scrubbed, clean buckets. So it's really nice to have a staff member fill all those buckets for you. They're all ready to go. And then I just pull I pull the entire bucket full and put it on the table, except for flowers that can't really lay flat on the table, like the zinnias or the dahlias. I just put entire buckets of those up on the table to grab from. And then I kind of come up with my recipe. I'm going to do 1 stem of Bells of Ireland, 3 stems of snapdragons, 1 stem of feverfew, and then fill in with cosmos or zinnias or whatever it is. And so again, if you try to have a value, I'm really trying to get $2 a stem for all my flowers. I haven't quite made it there yet, but you can kind of create a value based on your stems for your market bouquet. So if I'm doing a $20 market bouquet, it's going to have at least 10 stems. I usually have 10 to 15 stems in them. And you know, basically to make that recipe, you want to have kind of a balance of the different elements of flowers. So it's nice to have one of the spike flowers that would be like the snapdragon or the delphinium or the amaranth. Or the amaranth is kind of filler or spike. It can go either way. Filler flowers are kind of like the Queen Anne's lace, the Amy, the feverfew. Those are great fillers, the ones that are a little flatter on top. Then you want one of the focal flowers. That could be like a sunflower. It could be a lily, which I didn't talk about. I don't grow those yet, but it could be a dahlia or a lysianthus. So kind of one of more of the specialty flowers. And then I always like to give it a little airy element. So that's where even like the goldenrod has that little light twinkle up there, the straw flower, the gomphrena. So it really helps to just add those interesting elements. But again, you're not making a wedding bouquet. You're throwing those all together. And having a loose hand and holding down low, like training my daughter is so fun because she's 10 and she tends to hold it really tight up high. And I'm teaching her how to have that loose grip. You want to hold low on the stems, and you can kind of add them at an angle so that each flower is kind of, on stage, whereas you don't really want to cram them all in. It takes a lot of practice, but definitely try the adding at an angle. And I end up doing it just as I'm harvesting, because if I can hold like so many flowers in one hand, but eventually they stop fitting. So you keep adding them at an angle. So practice all the time with the angles, whether you're harvesting or throwing bouquets together. And yeah, like I said, customers love blue. They love the hot colors, any weird color combination. I used to be really particular. Every year I just keep getting looser and looser with my recipe and just kind of basically throwing the flowers together, because we've already done so much work to get them to this point that the customers should be able to take the bouquet home and kind of arrange it themselves a little bit. And it's more about having each stem, just recognizing the value of each stem. So yeah, I don't know if people have questions about that. We're good. Okay. So we use a craft paper wrap on all of our bouquets. And I found that when we switched to that, it really helped sales. It just gives it that kind of cute market bouquet look, but it also really does protect the flowers in their buckets. And as customers are grabbing and pulling and deciding which one they want, a lot of stems can get broken if you don't have them wrapped. I couldn't find any pictures that showed like the process of how I wrap, but basically we use the 50-pound craft paper from Uline. It's 18-inch by 24-inch, and I end up cutting those sheets in half, sometimes even into quarters if it's a small straight bunch. And then we just kind of lay them down, put the flowers on, and just kind of wrap them around. And we use our label to secure it. So then we're doing the branding as well. And I do love to label like feverfew or zinnia, like write the actual name of the flower down on the bunch, because I think it helps educate my customers.
Where do you get your labels printed?
I print them myself. So I have a Brother label printer, and it's one of those like infrared, so it doesn't require any ink. The labels are pretty expensive. We spend honestly thousands of dollars on labels every year, but it is kind of like advertising is how I see it. And I like the custom label because then I have tried ordering them before and it gets very frustrating if I change anything at all. It's kind of sucks to have a bunch of labels that then you can't use. So I really like being able to print my own. And that way I can be like, okay, I have 25 bunches of feverfew. I'm just going to print 25 feverfew labels.
And are you trademarked?
No.
And then do you make color themed bouquets for market?
Yeah, sometimes. I used to get real fancy like this. This is from a few years ago when I did like a bunch of bouquets that all were the same. And then I did a bunch of other bouquets that were all the same. But now I just kind of hit that 10 to 15 stem number. And a rainbow, people love rainbows. They love the rainbow colors. So I just kind of throw all the colors together and call it good. Okay, market setup. So we always kind of put our flowers front and center. I mean, you definitely want to make sure they're in deep shade. So a lot of times we're shuffling all day long, like starting out in the front corner and then the sun hits and then we're moving into another corner, but you definitely want to have them in a real easy to view spot for your customers to draw them in. Sometimes we put them out in the very front of our canopies, and I really like using the tables that have an adjustable height. So keeping them fairly low allows customers to kind of look down on the flowers and get a little better view of them. So putting them out in the front really draws people in, and then they can still access our booth to access all the vegetables, but having the flowers out in the front is a great way to draw people in, as long as you can keep them in the shade. And then if you can create tiers of levels, you can even put flowers on the ground. Sometimes we use a flipped over bulb crate to kind of create layers. And we use a universal bucket. So we use a 3-gallon black bucket we use for harvest and market. So it's really nice that it's just one bucket for everything.
Julian says, thank you dearly for all the beautiful information.
Oh,
And then Jenny asked, do you have a stem cutter?
no, nope. I just use my snips. I just have a, if I can go back to the, so I don't know if you can see right here. I just have like the compost bin right there when I'm making bouquets and just snip off the ends right into that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you have any issues when you're transporting like a mass amount of flowers?
Ooh, I really wish I had put a picture of our van in, but yeah, my husband built some shelves in our ProMaster van that have a little latch that you can either lay it flat or lift it up, and just having that little edge on the shelf keeps the buckets from slipping around. We have that, he built that in our box truck as well. So they go up on a shelf, and then it's nice because then you can throw cases of veg underneath.
Okay.
Okay, so here's my pricing info. I think I've talked a lot about this, but $10 for straight bunches, $20 for fresh bouquets, $2 a stem for tulips. And I really only grow a lot of the fancy tulips. So I grow like the doubles and the fringe and the, what are they called? Oh yeah, just all the fancy ones. So Mother's Day bouquets and vases, I got $40 for a pretty small vase this year. We made a lot of money on Mother's Day. It was really great. Dried bouquets, $15, dried wreaths, $45 to $100, and then garlic braids. I couldn't believe how they sold so well this year. We were getting $60 for garlic braids that had 13 heads of garlic in them, and we weaved the dried flowers in. I think I have a picture coming up of that. But here's a picture of my kid selling flowers. Isn't he so cute? It's amazing. Like my son this summer, my older son, I have 2 kids, 2 boys, but my older son, I remember handing him $100 bill because they bought like 5 bunches of flowers, and he was like, oh my gosh. So having the kids involved at the market is awesome. And for some reason, my boys they've been a huge help with the harvest, and then to see them out there selling the flowers, it's cool. And we do a CSA, which is really great to bring a little cash flow in this time of the year. So we just choose the 12 weeks of high summer, and I charge $250 for that. And I raised the price a little bit to kind of cover most people buy the shares online, and the credit card fees were really hurting. So I increased a little bit to cover the credit card fees. And yeah, it's really easy. Our CSA, people just pick up at market, and it's the same as our bouquet price. So they just get to choose a bouquet.
Jenny asked how you decide $60 for your garlic braids.
Well, I felt like making each one was almost like giving birth to a child. It takes so much focus and energy. I was like, nobody talked to me like the entire time I was making them. And when I was done, my heart told me like, these are worth $100, but I know I'm never going to get $100. I'm going to try for 65. 65 was not selling. As soon as I brought it down to 60, suddenly they started flying. So I guess using your intuition is maybe not the best advice for how to set your prices, but always pushing as high as you can and then lowering it slowly until you find that sweet spot where you're moving a lot of product, but still getting a high price.
And then Erin asked, do you think you can pay yourself and all your workers a living wage to do this work?
With just cut flowers? No, I don't think so. Not at market, because at farmers markets, people actually, I think, pay less for flowers at markets than like a retail, than a wholesale florist. Like, I think if you're gonna just do flowers, like you have to get super creative, doing weddings, doing wholesale, and doing farmers market. But as an add-on to a really successful veg operation, yes, 100%. Yeah, paying myself and my employees a living wage. Yes, we're doing that. Yeah.
And then Joy asks, can you talk about the temperature and humidity settings as well as if you use any water-soluble fertilizers to keep them longer?
Wait, temperatures for what?
Temperature and humidity settings, I assume, when you're storing them, as well as any water-soluble fertilizers to keep the flowers longer in the cooler.
Oh yeah, so we don't use any of the additives to the flowers once they're cut, any conditioners or flower food or anything like that. I think I'm not sure if any of them are even allowed in certified organic, but we just set them in the same cooler that our veg goes in. So it's in we have two different coolers, well, three actually, but we have the room set at 35 degrees. It fluctuates between 35 and 40. So that's where we keep our flowers. But then we have another room that's set at 50 where we keep or 55 where we keep our tomatoes. So definitely do not put your flowers in that room.
And then Melissa asks, if you're new to flower or growing flowers, which are the easiest, hardiest, and most forgiving for dipping your toe in?
Ooh, okay, let's go back to sunflowers, zinnias, calendula, amaranth, marigold. Yeah, those would be great starts. If you want to experiment with perennials, peonies are super easy. Once you get them established, they just keep kicking up stems every year.
How long do they take to establish usually?
About you're supposed to wait 2 to 3 years before picking.
And then Jenny asked if you do any weddings.
Oh yeah, I'm about to talk about that.
Oh, perfect.
So special events, weddings. For a while I was like, I'm going to become a huge florist. I'm going to do all the weddings. And now I'm really happy to not be doing that. I've only actually done maybe 10 full service weddings in my career, but it's fun to show up. But I can make so much money on a Saturday at farmers markets that I kept having to set my minimum higher and higher, and nobody was biting. And I gave up on doing the full service floral design. But I do really love working with brides and offering more affordable flowers for brides. So we do a lot of bulk buckets for brides. They give me a color palette, and then I hand pick every single stem for them. So I definitely am charging $2 a stem for these special orders because they give me a palette, and I'm choosing every stem and creating this gorgeous palette for them of their colors. So I have a $100 minimum for that, and I charge a $10 deposit for buckets. And it's really tough when you're managing a really busy veg farm that does 5 markets a week, and then also talking with brides. I have definitely dropped the ball a few times with people. So it's just, how much can you take on? How much can you handle? I found that I pretty much only allow people, they have to come to the farm to pick up, just because it's so chaotic with running everything that they have to come to me. And I've even had brides show up, or not brides, but somebody doing a party. Oh crap, I forgot to pick the 100 stems, but I can pick 100 stems in 10 minutes. So I just ran around the farm, picked it for them, and they were just so happy to walk around and watch. And it's a little more forgiving. I do also like to do a la carte design work. So that's where, and I have everything super transparent on my website of what I charge for everything. So a lot of the brides will do the bulk buckets. They'll make all their own centerpieces. And then I will make the bridal bouquet or the boutonnieres. So, but again, it's a whole nother element of learning how to do a wedding design versus a market design. But if it's your joy and your passion, there's a million workshops out there to learn those skills. And we're almost out of time, so I'm just gonna, oh, I made it, hooray. Yeah, any other questions, guys?
I'm sure some will come in, but
Okay.
in this couple seconds, I just want to say there are tons of comments in here about how thorough and how impressive your knowledge is about flowers, and it's really great.
Thank you so much.
And then Renee just said she'd love to hear about your favorite fillers and that last throughout the summer and fall, annuals and not perennials.
Amaranth I love. It's such a big fat flower that one stem of amaranth, you just only have to throw a few other flowers in there. I do sometimes do a late planting of Ammi green mist. I love that. It's just so yummy, and that bright white kind of contrast against all the other bright colors. Let's see, goldenrod really saved my life the first few years as we were starting out. So just foraging from your fields. Even in the spring, a lot of times I'll forage the gray dogwood that grows everywhere. It's a really nice early greenery that complements the peonies really well. So just you can even use mint, you can use raspberry, you can get so creative with fillers and greenery. But for me, you still have to recognize that when you're picking greenery, it's still labor and time. Even if it's a wild forage stem, it still takes a lot of time to go out there and pick each stem and strip each stem. So more and more, I'm actually not even doing foliage, and just, I have plenty of flowers. I have almost sometimes more than I can sell. So I don't need to do the extra labor of going out and picking foliage if I have plenty of flowers to fill out a bouquet.
And then Joy asks, what have you done with the dried flowers? Have you made any natural dyes? Yeah, what do you do with it?
Oh yeah, so I said earlier, I had a friend who is making dye. She dyes threads with flowers and then makes friendship bracelets with them. They're beautiful. And she used my purple tulip petals for that. And it made this like kind of, I don't know, it's really beautiful. But no, I haven't experimented with that too much, but I love that, seeing the silk where you lay the flowers flat. I don't know what that method is called, but yeah, I'm already working too much. And I just, to be totally transparent and honest, I do, you know, we do the full veg operation. The crew leaves at 4 o'clock, and that's when I start making bouquets, and I'm often up until midnight making bouquets.
Wow.
So it's total madness, but I think of it as like my second job or something. And I'm actually taking my kids. We're leaving tomorrow to go to Europe for 3 weeks. So I feel like it's because of the flowers that we're able to make that happen. And it's all that hard work that I did, you know, staying up until midnight every Friday night. So it's kind of like a bonus is how I see it. It's a little extra on top so that I can do some traveling with my kids. So
Amazing. Well,
yeah.
we're glad that you were able to meet with us right before your trip, and I hope it's amazing. This
Thank
is
you,
really
guys.
incredible. Thank you so much.
Yeah, if anybody wants a copy of the slides, just send me an email and I'm happy to share that, because we need more flower growers and we can all lift each other up if we work together. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you
Thanks,
so much.
Thank you, guys. Bye.